Welcome to the Daily Drum for this Thursday, March 27th, 2025. I'm Millette Green in tonight for the vacationing Harold Fisher. We do thank you so much for joining us for another insightful conversation this evening. We are sitting down with civil rights attorney Sherrilyn Ifill, a nationally recognized expert on civil rights and judicial selection. Now, attorney Ifill, Professor Ifill, will call her tonight as well, is embarking on a brand new endeavor, leading the just launched 14th Amendment Center for Law and Democracy at Howard University. Now, what is this new center all about, and what will its impact be on the students, the community, and the nation? So our guest tonight, Sherrilyn Ifill, thank you so very much. You are the inaugural Vernon E. Jordan Esquire Endowed Chair in Civil Rights. Thank you for being here this evening.
I'm thrilled to be with you. Thanks for having me.
And the timing couldn't be perfect, more perfect, in light of all that's going on from the White House to Congress to the federal courts. We got to get into some important conversations tonight and what this new center is going to mean for educating our young people in particular. Before we get into the specifics of the new center, I do want to make sure that our listeners and viewers have a basic understanding of the 14th Amendment and why it is such a crucial part of the Constitution. You've been a champion of civil rights, law, and social justice. So leading the 14th Amendment Center for Law and Democracy fits right into your life's work.
Yeah.
How would you describe to our audience tonight why the 14th Amendment is so critical to all of us?
Thanks, Millette. You know, that question tees up the very reason why I am creating the center. It would be impossible to ask a similar question about the First Amendment. Mm-hmm. Most Americans understand the First Amendment and its importance. Sometimes they get it wrong in terms of precisely what it protects, but they understand that they have free speech rights. They understand that they have the rights to religious freedom. And most Americans feel very comfortable saying, it's my First Amendment right. People will say, even in jest, I plead the Fifth, because people understand that there's a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination.
Yeah.
And there are many people in this country who believe passionately and strongly in their Second Amendment rights, and they will describe them that way. Now, those of us who believe strongly in equality, and especially racial equality, do we go around talking about our 14th Amendment rights? No, we don't. We do not ground our sense of our own full citizenship and of the concept of equality in the Constitution. We have allowed that discussion to become unmoored from our founding documents. And I conceived of this center long before this moment, by the way. This center is not a response to what we are experiencing in 2024, although, of course, it is relevant to what we are experiencing in 2024. As you've pointed out, I spent my whole career as a civil rights litigator. Most of what we litigate as civil rights lawyers are claims that are either advanced under the 14th Amendment itself or under statutes that Congress enacted pursuant to the power that the 14th Amendment gives them. So I think when people talk about civil rights, they don't understand that they're talking about the 14th Amendment. We talk about the civil rights movement. We talk about marches for equality. We talk about marches to get rid of Jim Crow, to end segregated waiting rooms and water fountains and public parks. We don't talk about those as constitutional actions. We don't talk about those as 14th Amendment actions, but what they were doing was forcing and compelling the true intention of the 14th Amendment to become realized. The amendment was ratified in 1868, right after the Civil War, and the purpose of the 14th Amendment was to ensure the full and equal citizenship of Black people in this country. It is the longest amendment in our Constitution. And you pointed out most Americans, yes, I want to educate our students, I want to educate ordinary people, but even most lawyers do not learn about the full 14th Amendment. We learn about the first part, about birthright citizenship, due process, equality, all very, very important. but we don't learn about the other parts that also are important and speak to what the framers of that amendment understood about this country. I want judges to know more about the 14th Amendment and the context in which it was ratified. And so we have unfortunately disempowered what one historian called the most important addition to our Constitution since the Bill of Rights. And I think that we need to ground our conversations about equality and justice in the Constitution. These are not optional rights that we're demanding. These are rights that are guaranteed us in the Constitution.
Yeah. Sherrilyn Ifill is our guest this evening, and this conversation is so very important. I don't think I mentioned that your work, I mentioned that you have been a champion of civil rights and civil rights law and social justice, but I didn't say that you served as the 7th president and director counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund.
Yes.
So that is important for our listeners to know if they don't already know. In terms of this center, the Howard University 14th Amendment Center for Law and Democracy, what is the goal in terms of the academic pursuit for the students who will utilize this?
Well, in some ways, I think of this as a continuation of the work of Charles Hamilton Houston, who, although he didn't call it that, really created the first 14th Amendment Center at Howard Law School. Charles Hamilton Houston really is the father of civil rights. He is the lawyer who was the dean then of Howard Law School, who trained Thurgood Marshall and many other young attorneys who became the attorneys who were the advanced team who created the field of civil rights law. And civil rights lawyering. And they set as their goal to break the back of Jim Crow segregation, and they did do that. And so I think of this as a continuation of that work. So the first and most important thing at a school is to educate students and to ensure that students have the equipment and the knowledge that they need. The 14th Amendment touches all of our lives. And that's the other myth I want to address in teaching this course and in the work of the center. The 14th Amendment does not just touch the lives of Black people. It touches everyone. Think about birthright citizenship. The first line of the 14th Amendment is all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state in which they reside. Now, yes, we are addressing that issue today in 2024 as it relates to migrants. But what I want you to think about is how that grant of birthright citizenship completely transformed the demography of this country. Tens of millions of European immigrants came to this country in the late 19th and early 20th century, full with the knowledge that if they had a child the day after they arrived at Ellis Island, that child was an American, that they had the opportunity to be naturalized within 5 years or so and become full citizens of this country. That was not available everywhere in the world.
And that's what made America
you hear
the
people
land that everybody wanted to come to.
Yes, and you hear people talking about using this phrase "Molette," which some find quite offensive, but using the phrase that America is a nation of immigrants. Now, obviously, that leaves out the Native American population and the Black population that did not immigrate to this country, but came here in chains and enslaved. But apart from those two populations, people immigrated to this country. And so there are lots of people walking around saying this is a nation of immigrants. And you have to ask, well, why? Where does that come from? It comes from this first sentence of the 14th Amendment, which is part of the lesson of how it works, how equality works, is that when we protect one group with the benefit of equality and full citizenship, it always redounds to the benefit of others, even the majority group, even the people who were unintended for this particular provision. And
so here we are in 2025.
Yeah.
Now with all of this under the microscope, under attack, the 14th Amendment. And it was striking that you said that a lot of lawyers, trained lawyers, judges as well, don't even understand the full scope of the 14th Amendment. I mean, obviously, in doing some background research and understanding the great Thurgood Marshall, and his litigation and strategic plan to end legal segregation in the United States and fulfill the 14th Amendment's promise of equal protection of laws. I mean, we've heard all about that, but how far does that go in terms of the impact today as we're seeing the 14th Amendment under attack and being challenged if lawyers, judges don't know the full scope of what this amendment covers and means? I mean, what is your biggest concern?
Yeah, that's why that's why I can say that I conceived of this idea of having such a center many years ago. Because even when I was a full-time litigator, which I am not anymore, I could see, right? It was apparent that many in our profession did not understand and do not understand the full scope of the 14th Amendment, the context in which it was drafted and ratified, the historical context that helps us understand what the framers were trying to accomplish, and the ways in which it has been shaped, undermined, stripped of meaning, used by other groups for whom it wasn't intended, in ways that should expand its provisions, but not. All of that has been on the table for years. This is not something new. So what do I say to that? I say I'm late and that we have to get on this and we have to get started with this. We have a whole new tranche of judges. Yeah. Some people talk about the fact that President Biden appointed more judges to the federal bench than any other president. Well, we have a whole new set of judges, therefore, who need to know and fully understand the scope and the possibilities of the 14th Amendment. We have lawyers, we have young people. And by the way, this is not, again, just for civil rights lawyers. I don't think most people know that that corporations have been one of the biggest beneficiaries of the 14th Amendment. In the 1880s, the Supreme Court essentially held that corporations were persons for purposes of the 14th Amendment. And so corporations bring claims all the time under the 14th Amendment, equal protection and due process claims. They could not have brought those claims but for the 14th Amendment, because corporations are state-created entities. So cases like Citizens United, does that sound familiar? Yeah. Or Hobby Lobby, in which the Supreme Court said that corporations even have religious freedom rights. All of that comes from the 14th Amendment. So we're not talking about just training lawyers who are going to become civil rights lawyers, although, it's a vanity of mine that I'm always trying to encourage law students to become civil rights lawyers. But whatever field you practice in, you're going to run into these concepts and you have to understand what they mean and what they were intended to do. So how is the center going to play in the national conversation that we're having right now on civil rights and democracy? What do you envision as the center's role here? Yeah, I think it's really important to weigh in with facts and truth and to educate people, because so much of our conversation is in sound bites and political speak. We saw it last year. The case that involved the state of Florida and the attempt to remove then candidate Trump from the ballot was brought under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which says that those who participated in insurrection cannot serve in federal or state government. We filed an amicus brief in that case. Helping people understand that was important. I would say that most judges had not read Section 3 of the 14th Amendment before that case started making its way through the courts, right? That's not something that we're taught in law school, I can assure you. This year, we're going to be talking about birthright citizenship. It's important for people to understand what were the conversations that were happening among members of Congress about birthright citizenship. For example, I make sure that people know that they had their own prejudices, despite their desire to ensure the citizenship of Black people. There were debates. You had Congress people, some from California, saying, are we going to be overrun by the children of Chinese laborers? At this time, Chinese people were not even allowed to become citizens, could not become naturalized. But obviously, if they had a child who was here, it would fall under birthright citizenship. And so you had members of Congress who were concerned and who, in terms I will not repeat, described Chinese and Asian immigrants and their children having citizenship as being something that they were profoundly concerned about. But after debate, in the end, they agreed that they would vote to ensure birthright citizenship even to the children of Chinese laborers. That's important, because making it as though we're having some new conversation about migrants that some Americans disfavor is in fact not new. those framers created and ratified and the 14th Amendment, including birthright citizenship, with the full knowledge that some members of that Congress deemed unfit to be citizens would become citizens. So
okay,
it's
so
important to show people that there's, that history exists.
Right. If you're just joining us, Sherrilyn Ifill is our guest, the inaugural Vernon E. Jordan Esquire Endowed Chair in Civil Rights. We're talking about the new Howard University Center for Law and Democracy. Okay, so in your vision of having this newly launched ability to educate the students and the public and the nation, what is your dream outcome for being able to make an impact in the community?
I'll go back where I began. If you see someone in some states in this country with a long gun on their back in a McDonald's, and they're standing in line to get a quarter pounder and they have a rifle on their back, and you ask that person, why do you need a rifle to buy a hamburger? They are likely to say, regardless of whether you agree with them or disagree with them, they are likely to say, because it's my Second Amendment right. Right? And when, people want to say things that are disfavored in our society, they will often tell you, it's my First Amendment right. You can't infringe on my First Amendment rights.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get to the point where when people talk about the right to equality and to equal justice under the law, that they talk about their 14th Amendment rights, that they ground it in the Constitution. Because what we have allowed is we have allowed the conversation about equality to become a moral conversation about whether you are a good person or not a good person, about whether you see race or don't see race, about whether you have a racist bone in your body or not. When in fact, that is irrelevant to the question of our constitutional rights.
Who do you want to see, Professor?
Well, let me just finish. So what I want is for not only lawyers, but I want ordinary Americans to feel that they have facility with this core constitutional principle. The 14th Amendment has been called the blueprint for a new nation, a nation that had to be recreated after it was fractured in the Civil War. And I think when we think about our nation and its founding, we tend to think about the first founding. We tend to think about Hamilton and Jefferson and Madison. And I want, when I ask someone who are the founders of this nation, for them to say those names, but I also want them to say Frederick Douglass. And I also want them to say John Bingham. And I also want them to say Thaddeus Stevens, the people who influenced and shaped the 14th Amendment. And it's the 14th Amendment that actually created the world, the America that you and I live in and that we believe we're entitled to. And so I want to see us get to a point where we acknowledge this buried history of who we are supposed to be. This is our national identity. Our national identity emanates from the principles of the 14th Amendment, where for the first time in our Constitution, the concept of equality, of every individual being equal to the other, appears. That is not in the first Constitution, with all due regard for the original framers, right? The first Constitution ensures that Black people, for purposes of representation, are 3/5 of a person and allows for the slave trade to continue until 1808. That's what the first Constitution does. It is the post-Reconstruction Constitution that frames that concept of equality that most of us think is part of our national identity and our national inheritance. I want people to know that.
Today is the launch of the 14th Amendment Center for Law and Democracy. And our conversation tonight is with Sherrilyn Ifill, who has this great responsibility that you obviously you are very excited and passionate about this. So when people are listening to this conversation, watching this conversation with the two of us, and they say, oh my goodness, I want to come. I want to learn more. Who do you see as the perfect candidate to walk into the center, and what kinds of programs or symposiums might the center host? Tell me about that part of the center's role.
Absolutely. Really, the center is designed to convene, to bring people together to talk and to learn. We're having an all-day symposium tomorrow. Unfortunately, we are maxed out. And so we are not able to open it more broadly to the public. But programming will be a core part of the center's work. So look out for, in the fall when the school year begins again, look out for programming churning through the center that you can come to. Look out for programs online. We want people who can't get out. You don't have to be in Washington, D.C. We're going to be teaching you. We're going to have a film series. We're going to have all of these different ways that people can learn. There are 4 pillars to the center: law and policy, education and curriculum, art, narrative and imagination, and democratic institutions. And core to this work is collaboration. We're collaborating with museums. We're collaborating with business leaders. We're collaborating with journalistic institutions to talk about these concepts and how these concepts can become infused in the work of those institutions as well. Yeah, go ahead, please.
What kind of support do you need from the community? What are you looking for from the outside community, from students, from young lawyers who want to get involved and who want to be a dynamic part of this? What are you looking for? What are you offering?
Well, I'm always oversubscribed, but I'm looking for students to continue to enroll in my seminar and to continue to support, the activities of the center. My students have been great this semester in getting us ready for this launch and continue doing that. Our website will be up this summer. And so you will be hearing from us. You're going to go on the Howard Law School website to find the link to the website for the 14th Amendment Center for Law and Democracy. Our social media launches later today. And so you'll start hearing from us. And you can always follow me on social media to find out what's going on. I'll be trying to provide links to the center's work and materials. And we really want to generate things that you can take for yourself. We want you to be able to have, especially in these days when there's so much challenge and so much controversy around what we can learn and not learn and what our children are exposed to. And there will be materials that are age suitable as well, so that you can join with your children, so that church groups can conduct teach-ins. And I still have a lot of energy. I make my way around the country. So I will be doing my best where I can to show up in person and to be at various events where I can talk to people and teach seminars and hear your questions, in real time. This is essential. This is an essential part of our citizenship in this country. It is essential that we know who we are and who we were meant to be, and that we understand this as part of our national identity. So I'm all in on this. As I said, you go to the law school website. You also can give to the center. We will accept your donation so that we can do these programs, and we need that very much. But
give the web address once again.
You want to go to www.howardlaw.edu and that law.howard.edu and learn more about us. And as I said, our website will launch this summer. If you follow me on any of my social media, I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on Threads, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Substack. As soon as that website is live, I will be sharing it so that you can learn more about the center and keep up with it directly. And I think this is going to be an important contribution to our national conversation. And my effort is always to provide as much light as heat. I want people to learn and know. It's critical to me that people know what they're talking about, and that we are equipped with the knowledge that we need to be able to talk in the terms that are appropriate for the rights to which we are entitled.
I only have 20 seconds left, but I do want to ask you, how do you feel confident that democracy, and this being an essential component of our democracy, with what's going on today, the climate that we're in, is going to be able to withstand the challenges that it is facing?
I think it's an excellent question. And I think, for the first time in many of our lives, we have to ask that question. My answer is that I know it won't, unless we equip ourselves to push, to fight, to learn, to be determined, to ensure that not only democracy survives, but that it gets better. That it gets better for our children and our grandchildren than it is at this moment, and than it was for our parents and our grandparents. Without that fight, without that commitment, this is no time for apathy or nihilism. You have to desire to learn, desire to participate, and desire to pressure. Frederick Douglass, one of our great founders, what did he say? Agitate, agitate, agitate. That's what we have to do.
And that's where we'll leave it. And so you can go do the good work. As this new launch happens today, the 14th Amendment Center for Law and Democracy, Sherrilyn Ifill, it is a pleasure to speak with you for just a short time. And I wish you the best of luck. And I am going to utilize the center's information and contributions to apply it to my work at NBC4 as a community reporter as well. So thank you for your time tonight, and best of luck to you and everyone involved.
Thank you so much, Millette.
Well, that's going to do it for the Daily Drum for this Thursday, March 27th, 2025. Make sure you join us tomorrow for the Daily Drum at 7 p.m. as we provide some consumer tips to help you keep more money in your wallet. That's very important right about now. For now, I'm Millette Green in for the vacationing Harold Fisher. Up next, the original Quiet Storm with the real love king himself, Raheem Devon, on 96.3 WHUR. I'll see you also tomorrow morning on NBC4. Have a good night.